Hare Krishna. Are there anybody who would like to introduce themselves?
Hare Krishna, Shyama Supriya Mataji. This is Anuradha Dasi from Baltimore. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada, all goes to Guru Maharaj and all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kamodiki Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call and giving your very valuable association this morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Shyama Supriya Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Anuradha Devi Dasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shyama Gauri Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining this Lilamrta session and giving your very valuable association this morning, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Gurudev. Please accept my humble obeisances. This is Anuradha from Fairfax. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Shri Hari Radha Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining this session and giving your very sweet association this morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Supriya Mataji, Dan Pranam, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Gopika Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the session and giving your very sweet association this morning. Hare Krishna. Okay, now we can move to our next part of our session. That is our Lilamrta. And I am very happy today we have with us Her Grace Anuradha Mataji. Today I'm very fortunate and very happy to announce that we have Her Grace Anuradha Mataji to give the summary of Lilamrta chapter 3. And Hare Krishna, Anuradha Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji, for giving your very precious time and valuable association this morning and giving the summary of chapter 3, Mataji. Now I hand over the call to you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Shyama Supriya Mataji. Am I audible?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you so much. And really very grateful to Bhakti Sangha, though I'm not qualified at all, but obviously I feel fortunate to do this, and it's a big chapter. I hope I can complete it on time. And I beg forgiveness in advance that many of it will be reading from the screen. So I hope it doesn't get very monotonous for you. And please stay tuned because this is such an important chapter. And so I'll quickly start with the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Praying at the lotus feet of my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, all the Guru Vargas and all the assembled Vaishnavas. May I speak few words in the glorification of our dearmost Srila Prabhupada. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvevacha patita nam pavnevyo vaishnavevyo namo namo mukum karoti vachalam pangum langayate giram yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurunti nakarina. All right, Mataji, can I share? Yeah, I can.
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
Can you see the screen, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. It is not in the presentation mode.
Yeah, I will do.
We are able to see, Mataji.
Now it is, right?
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
Yeah. So this is Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrta, chapter 3. The chapter name is A Very Nice Saintly Person. So this is a very, very crucial chapter, as we know that it is very so essential in our lives that when we meet our spiritual master, and that's the time it says we are called twice born when we get initiated, because that is our second birth, and it is so important. And that is, see, every animal, every living entity gets in, a birth, because everybody will have mother, father, everybody gets a birth, but only in the form, human form, that one gets a spiritual master. Of course, the demigods too. So in this very special form that we get a spiritual master, and the moment we realize, okay, this is the person to be, and how special that is, and that's what we will see in this chapter. Please bless me, pray for me that I can complete, and I don't put you to sleep. So beg your prayers and blessings. With that, we'll go ahead. This is the first meeting. I tried to title it as much as I could, and so I'll be reading. There has not been, there will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees have been. The offer of other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm, whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is the truest and the greatest eternal benefit. This benefit is not for one particular country, causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole universe by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj ki jai. So we see how profound, how profound our acharyas are until we read them, until we hear about them, until we know what their thoughts were. We think we are very smart because we are discovering mobile phone, we are inventing so many things. But if you read what they speak, that is like beyond conception, beyond something that we can conceive. Like, wow, I've never thought it that way. Like here he is saying that, we think that we are doing good for our country, but while doing good for our country, we will be doing bad for others. But this Krishna conscious movement, the message of Lord Sri Chaitanya, is not something which is not deceptive. It is not like you are closing the hole on the pot in one place and making 10 other holes in other spots. It is not that kind of doing good. It is a real benefactor. It will really, really benefit the entire world and not causing others, it won't cause others any harm. Rather, it is beneficial to everybody. So with that, that's the message of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then we see how Srila Prabhupada first time meet this very nice saintly person. So Prabhupada's friend, Naren, was insisting to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada must meet this sadhu who has come from Mayapur. Now, Srila Prabhupada, being born in a Vaishnava family, we have been seeing his father always inviting so many sadhus. He was not much interested. And in fact, we see this is called Abhacharan series, when Srila Prabhupada goes to Bhubaneswar to see Jagannath Puri. There he was going and he wanted to visit the dham, and but these pandas were coming and troubling him, and he was like, okay, I'm done with the sadhus and the pandas. I don't want to be bothered like that, because he had seen so many. And what Prabhupada thinks we'll see in a moment, but he was not much interested to see this sadhu from Mayapur. But Naren was so persistent, they stood talking amidst the passerby on the crowded early evening street as the traffic of horse-drawn hackneys, that is tanga, ox cart, and occasional auto taxis. That's a very old picture on top here. If you can see right on top of this picture, this is a very old Calcutta picture. Motor buses moved noisily on the roads. Naren put his hands firmly around his friend's arm, trying to drag him forward, while Abhay smiled but stubbornly pulled other way. So Naren was not interested. So we can pay our obeisances here. This is the place where Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master first time. This is Ultadanga Junction, Kolkata. Naren argued that since they were only few blocks away, let's go. And the reason why Naren was insisting, it says in the book that, Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, Abhay, they wanted his opinion because his opinion matters to them. it mattered to them. They cared about what he thinks. If Abhay they thought so high of Srila Prabhupada, Abhay, that they thought that, okay, if he agrees, then we can, and few of other friends had met the sadhu already. Now they think if only Abhay gives his opinion, then we will be very sure that, okay, he is the one. So that's why Naren wanted Abhay's opinion on this sadhu. And Naren argued that since they were just few blocks away, they should at least pay a short visit. Although laughed and asked to be excused, sure, people would see that, the two young men were friends, and yet they were like in kind of it was a curious sight. And the handsome young man dressed in white khadi kurta and dhoti being pulled along by his friend. So, Naren was. But the reason why Srila Prabhupada was resisting to meet another sadhu, because he thought he is just another sadhu, because since childhood he has seen so many sadhus, and they were like sadhus for the namesake, we say. And Prabhupada had this thought in his mind that, but did it mean that though a man was no more than a beggar or ganja smoker, he had to be considered saintly just because he dressed in a sannyasi or was collecting funds, sannyasi, or just collecting funds in the name of building a monastery, or could influence people with his speech? So just because somebody is wearing an orange cloth, somebody just because is speaking very nicely and collecting fund for some missionary purpose, he has to be a real sadhu? No, Prabhupada did not think that way. Even if he was young, he was in his I think early teens or early 20s and late teens. He was not thinking. He was in college. He was a young guy, but he still had a conception about sadhu. He had an image about how a sadhu should be, and he realized. And then Prabhupada, he says that there was a neighbor of his who was beggar by profession, and he was dressed as a sadhu for his livelihood. So this is how the cheating business. So they didn't have any renunciation, they didn't have any knowledge, they didn't have anything that a sadhu should have. But yet they were like more of an actor than a sadhu. So Srila Prabhupada, if you see our movement also, and if you hear Srila Prabhupada's lecture, you will find this concept so deep rooted into Srila Prabhupada. He says lecture after lecture, he's saying that, bogus sadhus and bona fide sadhu, bogus spiritual master and bona fide. Why did he, called as a spiritual master? He could have just said it as a bona fide spiritual master, he says, right? Always he's writing bona fide spiritual master. He could have just simply written spiritual master and we would have all understood. But especially in India, we see so many bogus sadhus. If he does not write that bona fide spiritual master, we may not even give it a thought. We will think everybody is a bona fide spiritual master. Whoever claims them to be a sadhu, a spiritual master, a sadguru, we don't know whether they're sat or asat, but because they're calling themselves guru, we will accept him. That's the reason. If you think Prabhupada has written that bona fide, the moment you read bona fide spiritual master, the question comes that why is Prabhupada writing bona fide spiritual master? Does it also mean there can be spiritual masters who are not bona fide? Then you will
Mataji?
Yeah, it got stuck, Mataji.
Anuradha Mataji. Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji, where did I get disconnected? I'm so sorry. Next time it get disconnected.
The moment you are
About
saying about bona fide as spiritual master, then you get a question of how to, like, wow, is there any means unbona fide, or like that you are talking right now?
If it get disconnected, I will, maybe some problem with my internet, I'll connect from my phone, Mataji, in that. Sorry.
Sure, Mataji.
Yeah, so so as it was said that, that the moment that we read that there is a bona fide spiritual master, we have this question, is there any spiritual master who are not bona fide? So that we ask this question, as I was mentioning, I'm not sure till where you heard it, that we should ask, but ask with a very submissive mood, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:34, that we should have a mood of service, we should have a mood of submissiveness, and then ask question. We should ask question. We should know who is the real spiritual master and who is not. So moving to the next slide. So as Srila Prabhupada entered, finally he gave up. Basically, he gave up. He said, okay, Naran is being too stubborn. Let's just go with him. And then he entered. As soon as they entered, he saw this sight. Sitting with his back very straight, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati appeared tall. He was slender, his arms were long, and his complexion was fair and golden. He wore round bifocals with simple frames. His nose was sharp, his forehead broad, and his expression was very scholarly. Yet, I'll put it in presentation, sorry. Yet not at all timid. The vertical markings of Vaishnava Tilaka on his forehead were familiar to Abhay, as were the simple sannyasa robes that draped over his right shoulder, leaving the other shoulder and half his chest bare. He wore tulsi neck beads, and the clay Vaishnava markings of Tilaka were visible at his throat, shoulder, and upper arms. A clear white Brahminical thread was looped around his neck and draped across his chest. Abhay and Naren, having both been raised in Vaishnava families, immediately offered prostrated obeisance at the sight of the revered sannyasi. So there comes the first instruction. So, they say love at first sight. So Prabhupada's first instruction at first sight. And this is the instruction, right? This is the instruction that gave birth to ISKCON. And what was that instruction? That is, you are educated young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world? And Prabhupada writes in his purports that with instruction comes empowerment. And we will see in more details in the next slide. It's from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 14. This is the ecstasy of the Lord and his devotees. There, towards the end, this is the last part of the book, this particular chapter, where that's why it says thus, where as we have been reading teachings of Lord Chaitanya couple of weeks now, and we see how Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatan Goswami. He's giving, it is called Sanatan Shiksha. He's giving all these instructions. And there, this is the part where thus Sanatan Goswami prayed for the Lord's confirmation that his teachings would actually evolve in his heart by his grace. Otherwise, Sanatan knew that there was no possibility of his being able to describe the Lord's teaching. The purport of this is that the Acharya, spiritual masters, are authorized by higher authorities. Instruction alone cannot make one expert. This is very important. Instruction alone cannot make one an expert unless one is blessed by the spiritual master or Acharya. Such teachings cannot become fully manifested. Therefore, one should seek the mercy of the spiritual master so that his instruction can develop within oneself. So Srila Prabhupada is insisting on this point that how just we often think, okay, I'm given the service and I will do it. And I happened to ask my spiritual master, Maharaj, whenever I'm doing something, whether it is attending Mangalarti or doing any service at the temple, I'm scared that I will feel pride, I'll get into this feeling of pride. And Maharaj said, a disciple who thinks he can do even an iota of spiritual service, anything in spiritual life, he's the foolest, he's the most fool, in this world. Because in spiritual life, we cannot move an iota of anything in the spiritual life without the mercy, without the spiritual master's mercy. We cannot do anything in spiritual life. So this is, that is what Srila Prabhupada has taught them, our wonderful spiritual masters. And that is what Srila Prabhupada has learned from his spiritual master. And that's the disciplic succession. And Prabhupada, because he was, as we read the description, he was wearing this khadi cloth, right? So he was already declaring that he is a Gandhi supporter. Because as we know, back in India, when British were tormenting, and people gave up the British clothing and they burnt them. It's called boycott. They did, they boycotted everything which was British made, and they wore khadi, Indian made, and Gandhi supporter, So Prabhupada was thinking that, okay, I have a view that what we see through this chapter is like Prabhupada taught what he has learned since his childhood. That's what he taught us. Like he preached what he practiced. So Prabhupada, he asked, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when he heard first time Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was wonderstruck. He was like, come on, you just saw me just like few seconds, and you were, or few minutes maybe, and you were just giving me instruction. You don't even know my thought. You don't even know like what's going on in my mind. So this obvious question came to Abhay, and he asked this to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that who will hear your Chaitanya's message? Abhay queried, first, India must become independent, right? How can we spread Indian culture if we are under British rule? So, and Abhay thought that this question is pretty obvious and reasonable question, right? Because the entire India was suffering and struggling for the basics. So when you're struggling for the basics, how can you like go for Chaitanya's message or Krishna consciousness? But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as we know him like a lion-like guru, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied in a quiet, deep voice that Krishna consciousness did not have to wait for a change in Indian politics. How beautiful. Nor was it dependent on who ruled. Krishna consciousness was so important, so exclusively important that it could not wait. And Prabhupada had this, he was thinking that, independence was a necessity, and whereas spirituality is a luxury. Only when you're relaxed, you have everything supplied, then only you can do Krishna consciousness. And he also thought that in the present times, the cause of national liberation from the British was the only relevant spiritual movement. The people's cause was in itself God. That's what Srila Prabhupada was thinking. Coming from Vaishnava family, he appreciated the words of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, as he realized that this is not a questionable sadhu, and Abhay had faith in his words. So he realized, he has seen so many sadhus as we discussed earlier. Now he realized this is not a sadhu that I have seen before. And so he had faith in his words. The sadhu, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was speaking the eternal teachings of Vedic literature and the sages, and Abhay loved to hear it. Speaking sometimes in English, sometimes in Bengali, and also quoting the verses from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, insisting on pleasing Krishna is the only Bhagavat Dharma, which should remain as one's duty, like above everything, as Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Parityaja Mameka Sharanam Braja. Leave all the dharma and leave all religion and just surrender unto me. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, and this is what Krishna also teaches. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, take the shelter of Krishna, and Krishna says, take my shelter. And that's what our Acharya is teaching. He emphasized the urgent, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur emphasized the urgent need to render the highest good to humanity by educating people about the eternal soul and the soul's relation to Krishna and devotional service. Abhay had never forgotten the worship of Lord Krishna or his teachings in Bhagavad Gita, but now he was astounded to hear the Vaishnava philosophy presented so masterfully. Despite his involvement in college, marriage, national movement, and other affairs, he had never forgotten Krishna. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was now stirring up within him his original Krishna consciousness. And by the words of this spiritual master, not only was he remembering Krishna, but he felt his Krishna consciousness being enhanced 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Hari Bol. He felt himself defeated. He liked it. But he liked it. He suddenly realized that he had never before been defeated. Because as we know that, how Naren wanted to take the opinion of Abhay because he was such a smart person. We hear also from Srila Prabhupada memories that, he used to play chess with his friend and he would say, whoever wins the chess will get the lunch. I mean, he will eat his own lunch and whoever is the winner will eat his own lunch and also eat the opponent's lunch. So Prabhupada and then Prabhupada's friend, he used to say that, I never got to eat my lunch ever. I never get to eat it because Prabhupada will always win over him on chess and then he will take both the lunches. So we see how intelligent Prabhupada was. So he was never defeated. He was number one in everything as he is. But this defeat was not a loss. And this is the first time Prabhupada was feeling defeated and happy at the same time. It was an immense gain. Moving on. So they were sitting there, they're going back and forth. He was giving his point, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati went on. Actually, there is some more. I did not bring them up here, but so much of backing he was giving what he was saying. Why did he feel that Krishna consciousness is more urgent than the independence of a country? Right. So yeah, and then after that, after such kind of discussion for more than 2 hours, they finally Abhay left with his friend with a grateful and satisfied heart, pondering over the conversation. He was just thinking what's happening. They took some prasadam and they left, but he was very grateful and satisfied and was thinking, meditating upon what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was talking. Walking away from the ashram, Naren turned to his friend. So Abhay, what was your impression? What do you think of him? He is wonderful, replied Abhay. The message of Lord Chaitanya is in the hands of a very expert person. Srila Prabhupada says that I accepted him as my spiritual master immediately. Not officially, but in my heart, I was thinking that I had met a very nice saintly person. End of part 1. Now coming to birth and parentage of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur, the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, had said this, oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German, and American people will take up banners, mridanga, and kartals and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. When will that day come? And that day is here. We are all experiencing it. But this was the, desire. And of course, pure devotees' desire is not just an empty desire. It's filled with so much of potency that Lord himself becomes bound to fulfill it. And so we see it's been fulfilled by our dear Srila Prabhupada. A little bit about Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, through his prolific writing and through his social position as a high government officer, re-establish the respectability of Vaishnavism. As we know, it was losing its authenticity. People were, because of so many kind of sahajiyas, they were taking it cheap, they were taking it easy, they were making it very loosened. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur is the one Acharya who re-established its respectability, the respectability of Vaishnavism. He preached that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were the highest form of theism and were intended not for a particular sect or religion or nation, but for all the people of the world. He professed that Lord Chaitanya's teachings would go worldwide, and he yearned for it, as we saw in the beginning of before previous slide, that he was yearning for it. He professed that, okay, prophecy, it was his prophecy that this will happen, and he desired, and his potency that it came true. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a responsible government officer, prominent magistrate. He served also as superintendent of the temple of Lord Jagannath. He was father of 10 children. Yet, in spite of all these responsibilities, he served the cause of Krishna with prodigious energy. Moving on. Okay, now this is the Bhajan Kutir. You all can read here, of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhajan Kutir. But what here I can read is, it says in Bengali, it's a Nirmito, which means established, and then it said Ing, that is English, 1899 Shal is year. So this is the Bhajan Kutir of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as you see. And then it says that after coming home, this is the lifestyle of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I thought we all can get inspired. After coming home from his office in the evening, taking his meals and going to bed, he would sleep from 8 until midnight and then get up and write until morning. He wrote more than 100 books during his life, many of them in English. One of his important contribution, with the cooperation of Jagannath Das Babaji, there we see the picture on top, and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, down here, was to locate the exact birthplace of Lord Chaitanya in Mayapur, about 60 miles north of Calcutta. As we know that Navadvip is been wrongly being worshipped. It was not the same place. So it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who, looking into the map with the help of Jagannath Das Babaji to confirm that what he was thinking was right, because he had the vision of seeing Kirtan and Sankirtan in a different place than what was considered to be Navadvip, which was considered to be Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. It was not where he saw the Sankirtan. And then he had a doubt. We see all this in Abhaycharan series. And then he went to that place and he saw Tulsi Maharani there. And then he confirmed from the people there. And then that's the actual place he found with the help of Jagannath Das Babaji, who confirmed. He said in Bengali, this is where Eito Nimai Janmosthan. This is the place where Nimai Gauranga Mahaprabhu was born. And then that's how this is biggest contribution. We are worshipping the right place where, the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Birth of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So while working to reform the Gauriya Vaishnavism in India, he prayed to Lord Chaitanya, your teachings have been much depreciated. It is not in my power to restore them. So he prayed, send me help. And on February 6, 1874, Bhakti Siddhanta was born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jagannath Puri. Then the Vaishnavas, they realized it is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prayers that the answer came as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was born with an umbilical cord wrapped around his neck and draped across his chest like a sacred thread worn by Brahmanas. His parents gave him the name Bimala Prasad. So his actual name, because they prayed to Bimala Devi also, so his name was Bimala Prasad. When Bimala Prasad was 6 months old, the cart of Jagannath, we know this famous story, right? Many of us know that the Jagannath Ji's cart stopped in front of the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and the cart was not moving at all for 3 days until Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wife took Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati or Bimala Prasad to the cart, and he extended his hand towards the Lord, and the Lord, as in reciprocation, gave a garland of his for Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then his parents realized, okay, this is really the answer of the Lord for my prayers. Bhaktivinoda Thakur got that. So one day when Bimala Prasad was really not more than a 4-year-old, he just happened to eat a mango which wasn't duly offered. And very lightly Bhaktivinoda Thakur just chastised him, saying, Bimala, how could you have it without offering to Krishna? And he felt so hard, he was like, yeah, how could I do that? And he vowed that he would never eat another mango, and he never did. So by the time Bimala Prasad was 7-year-old, he knew the entire Bhagavad Gita, verse to verse, even the meaning behind them. Then his father started training him in proofreading and printing. in conjunction with the publishing of the Vaishnava magazine. This is called Sajjana Toshini. With his father, he visited many holy places and heard discourses from the learned Panditas. As a student, Bimla Prasad liked to read the books written by his father rather than the textbooks, And when he was 25, he had become well versed in Sanskrit, mathematics, and astronomy. Moving on, more reading. I'm sorry about it. Let me to move this. Okay. He had established himself as the author and publisher of many magazines, articles, and one book called Surya Siddhanta. It's a very difficult book. We have it at home. It's a very difficult book. I mean, it's a very, very difficult, hard to, even to read through it, or let alone to conceive it. It's a very difficult book. And he was the author for that, for which he received the epithet Siddhanta Saraswati. So he got this title called Siddhanta Saraswati for Surya Siddhanta in recognition of his erudition. When he was 26, his father guided him to take initiation. We know this, how he got the initiation from Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Like first he said, no, I'm not giving any initiation. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was headbound that no, if the initiation has to be taken, it has to be taken from you. Otherwise, I'll give up my life. And finally, Gaurkishore Das Babaji accepted him as his disciple and then gave him this instruction to preach the absolute truth and keep aside all other work. And that's when he was no longer doing the, that's when he stopped after Surya Siddhanta. He no longer proceeded on that field. So receiving the blessings of Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Bimla Prasad now, Siddhanta Saraswati resolved to dedicate his body, mind, and words to the service of Lord Krishna. So he was not doing anything else except Krishna consciousness right now. In 1905, Siddhanta Saraswati took a vow to chant Hare Krishna mantra 1 billion times. Residing in Mayapur in a grass hut near the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, he chanted the Hare Krishna mantra day and night. He cooked rice once a day in an earthen pot and ate nothing more. He slept on the ground, and when the rain water leaked through the grass, he took an umbrella and still continued chanted. He didn't take it as an excuse like me, oh, it's raining and I cannot chant, I'll chant later. No, he was just going on chanting, and he chanted more than actually 1 billion times. In 1911, while his aging father was lying ill, Siddhanta Saraswati took up a challenge. This is a time when the competition, like, Vaishnava, only person who is born in a Vaishnava family, Brahmana family, can only become a Vaishnava and can, can do Krishna consciousness, not other. So he, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he traveled to Medinapur. He traveled to Medinapur for 3 days. And there he was speaking. He first spoke about how high the Brahmanas are, what is the position of a Brahmana, how wonderful the Brahmanas are, and they were becoming very, very happy. They inflated like a balloon. And then he just took a pin and pricked it and deflated it by saying that but if a Brahmana do not act like a Brahmana, do not behave like a Brahmana, then he is no better than a Shudra. But a Shudra who is behaving like a Brahmana, so he should be treated as such. And after that, of course, they were hurt in their understanding. So, but then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur got immense followers. He had so many followers. And the picture that you see in the background is the kutir of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where he chanted more than 1 billion times of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. After passing away of his father in 1914 and spiritual master in 1915, Siddhanta Saraswati continued the mission of Lord Chaitanya. He assumed editorship of Sajjana Toshini and established the Bhagavat press in Krishnanagar. In 1918, in Mayapur, he sat down before a picture of Gaur. We know this, like how, Gaur, in front of Gaurkishore Das Babaji's picture, he initiated himself into sannyasa, and he took the title as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. He thought of the printing press as Brihad Mridanga, as a big Mridanga. Why? Because Kirtan could be heard only for a block or two. But with the Brihad Mridanga, the big Mridanga, the book, drum of printing press, message of Lord Chaitanya could be spread all over the world. Now, we see this in our life. Srila Prabhupada, he brought the books with him and he continued printing them, and we still have books are our basis, right? So without the books, Mridanga and Kartal, they can be Kirtan Sankirtan. They could be heard, like as here it's being mentioned, up to few miles, maybe. But the book can travel. It traveled that we are sitting in Dallas and still, trying to, or sitting in US or whichever place we are. But because of these books and because of Srila Prabhupada's preaching from the Acharyas, we are able to practice Krishna consciousness, so smoothly, I would say. Like everything is provided, whether it is a temple or it is the association, books, chanting, prasadam, everything is provided. But as they say, books are the basis. We need to understand whatever we are doing, why we are doing. Otherwise, it will lose its spirit. It loses its essence. So books. So we see that this is a month of, what do you say, book marathon. Previous, like earlier month, Kartik month was, we are showing the lamp to the deities or the picture of Yashoda Damodar. Now this is the time when we bring light in the people's life who has not touched, who has not been blessed and fortunate enough to be touched by Krishna consciousness. And we need to do that now. This is the month we try to the best of our ability. We try to distribute books in this month. It is called a book marathon, as many as you can, or more than you can. And we need to bring Krishna in people's life because they are in darkness. And as they say that, and I say it in the scripture, that Krishna Surya Saman, Maya hoy andhakar. Jahan Krishna taha nahi, Maya radhikar. Wherever there is Krishna, there is light, there is knowledge. The knowledge brings the light. And the knowledge comes, what goes away? Ignorance. So the Maya cannot stand where Krishna is there. So we need to bring those people out of ignorance and give them Krishna, give them light. And so that's what Brihad Mridanga is all about. And that's the term that's given to the book distribution and the printing of books. It's called Brihad Mridanga, but because the books can travel much further than the sounds of the actual Mridanga. Bhagavat Press, established in 1915. Bhagavat Press had printed the Chaitanya Charitamrita with commentary of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, the Bhagavad Gita with the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and one after another the works of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. The literature was the spiritual heritage coming from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who had appeared almost 500 years before. And these were the books that, Prabhupada was relishing, and he was drowning in the ecstasy. Like he was like, oh, this is where I belong to. He has seen everything, but now the philosophy he was getting, he was getting this nectar of the Vaishnavism, the nectar of Vaishnav philosophy. He was like drowning, and he was in the ocean. And he was so happy and he was so satisfied reading all these books that's been published by Bhagavat Press. There were many books not yet published, but Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati intended to establish many, many presses just to release the sound of the Brihad Mridanga for the benefit of all people. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was teaching the conclusion of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the chanting of his holy name should be stressed above all other religious practices. Abhay knew these verses, he knew the chanting, he knew the conclusion of the Gita, but now he eagerly read the writings of the great Acharyas. He had fresh realizations of the scope of Lord Chaitanya's mission. Now he was discovering the depth of his own Vaishnav heritage and its efficacy for bringing about the highest welfare for people in an age destined to be full of troubles. As mentioned before, the end of part 2, part 3, the transition. Now, this is the time when Srila Prabhupada was very busy, and so was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur traveling everywhere, so they could not meet. But Abhay did not forget, he did not get a chance to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as often as he would like, but he always thought of him and tried to seek the association of the Gauriya Math, which belonged to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They are his disciples, the devotees of Gauriya Math. Now his interest shifted from Gandhi movement when he came with the Gandhians, right? He wanted to do what Gandhi was saying. Now he wanted to do what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying. So his movement shifted. So his interest shifted from Gandhi movement to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's movement. But due to family commitment, he could not join the movement completely. So as we know, Abhay wanted to give himself completely to the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but because he was already married, he had a family, so he could not do that. And as the family was growing, so was the need for the income, which means that he had to give more time and more energy. And in Indian culture, family values matters a lot, and divorce was not heard of. Abhay realized if only he could earn more, he could even support the Gaudiya Math. So Abhay set off for Allahabad under the guidance of Dr. Bose. Dr. Bose is the family friend, doctor who was helping, who was like since childhood he had seen, he's the one under whom he was working so far, but now that he realized he needs more, income, so he was thinking of trying out other ventures or venturing out some more. End of part 3. And now they are moving to Allahabad or Prayag. In 1923, Abhay and his wife and child moved to Allahabad, a 20-hour train ride northwest from Calcutta, older section with ancient narrow streets close. The reason this narration is there, that's because there's a section in Allahabad where Nehru and family and all the big people used to stay, and there was one more portion, one more section of Allahabad or Prayag where not so well-to-do people used to stay, and Abhay was staying there. It was the older section with ancient narrow streets closely lined with buildings and shops. Many Bengalis resided there, and it was where Abhay was residing too. Abhay chose Prayag because it was both beneficial for his business and for his spiritual development. Abhay and Dr. Ghosh, he was a physician, Dr. Ghosh. Now this is not Dr. Bose, this is Ghosh, whom he met, and he was practicing by his own, being a physician. But when he met Abhay, they started together a venture. It's called Prayag Pharmacy. Gormohan, who was now 75, Gormohan Srila Prabhupada's father, had come to live with him, as had Abhay's widowed sister, Rajeshwari, and her son, Tulasi. Gormohan mostly stayed at home, chanted on his beads, and worshipped the Shaligram deity of Krishna. He was satisfied that Abhay was doing right, and Abhay was satisfied to have his father living comfortably with him and freely worshipping Krishna. Both Motilal Nehru and his son, Jawaharlal Nehru, were customers at Prayag Pharmacy. Because Jawaharlal Nehru would always order Western medications, Abhay thought that he must have felt that Indian ways were inferior. But at the same time, we see that, Srila Prabhupada's wife, Radharani Mataji, she was not as supportive as he wished she was. And there he says that Abhay's wife was not inclined to share her husband's interest in things which are spiritual. He could not convey to her his feelings about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So he kept it to himself. He did not share it because he realized that she would anyway not understand it. Now that's a family portrait. Quickly describe. Here we see Srila Prabhupada. Here is Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's 2-year-old son, Prayagraj. Prabhupada's wife, Radharani. Prabhupada's father, Gormohan De. Prabhupada's widowed sister, Rajeshwari. This is Prabhupada's daughter. Her name is Shulakshmana, and brother, Krishna Charan, and and her son, Tulasi, as we described in the previous slide also. So that's the end of part 4. Traveling and following a regulative principle. So Srila Prabhupada, this time he was traveling a lot back and forth, he was traveling. And while traveling, he was mostly traveling, and it was like a 3rd-class compartments, and they were not comfortable at all. They had to sit only on the bench. They were very uncomfortable. So the British hasn't, but all he could hear was chai, 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 or tea, tea, tea. The British had introduced this tea. And now millions of Indians were convinced that they could not get through the morning without their little glass of hot tea. So those who have the experience of traveling in Indian railways, we always hear early in the morning, you wake up, morning call is like chai, chai, chai. But for Srila Prabhupada, as a strict Vaishnava, Abhay never touched it. But his wife, much to his displeasure, was becoming a regular tea drinker. Standards. Although Abhay was accustomed to dressing as an European businessman, he never compromised his strict Vaishnava principles. Most of his fellow Bengalis, most of his friends had taken up fish eating, but Abhay always was careful to avoid non-Vaishnava food even when he was, at hotels. Once at a vegetarian hotel, the Empire Hindu Hotel in Bombay, he was served onions, and sometimes hotel people tried to serve him mushrooms, garlic, and even eggs. But all of this has been carefully avoided by Abhay, keeping a small semblance of his home routine. Now, even if he was traveling, he did not succumb to, okay, I'm traveling, and his day did not go hayway. He always kept a similar schedule and home routine. He would take his bath early in the morning with cold water. He followed this routine year round. And when in Saharanpur, he did so during the bitter cold weather, the hotel keeper was greatly surprised. And we see this even in Prabhupada memories, that how his disciples and his servant, Shrutakirti Prabhu, he would say, and many others who traveled with Srila Prabhupada, that there was no jet lag, there was no times, no time zone space. He will get up here also in America in the morning in the Brahma Muhurta, and there also he would not change his schedule just because the time has shifted, and nothing made him change his schedule. He will be as it is. And one more thing that I was thinking while reading this, that this Prabhuji was saying, I forgot the name of this Prabhuji, he was saying that, of course, Prabhupada's disciple, that when Prabhupada will go to sleep and when he will wake up, whether especially the afternoon nap, for a person like me, I'll be, as soon as I get up from a sleep or a nap, I'll be in a slumber. It takes time to understand where am I, who am I, and all that stuff. It takes few seconds or sometimes minutes or so. But for Prabhupada, he will not, the moment he got up, he was like in his full consciousness. There was no time to come back. There was no time for coming back. He was already there. He will nap and get up, and he will still remain in the same consciousness. He will not talk here, there, or he will not get confused. But he will be always in the right consciousness. Prabhupada always started from where he ended. So the focus. So on one business trip, it was in 1925, he traveled through Agra, only 40 miles south of Vrindavan. Taking the opportunity, he made his first visit to holy Vrindavan, fulfilling his childhood aspiration. He loved the sight of Vrindavan, but he could spend only a day or two, even a single day away from his sales work, which could be even crucial and critical. As a reverent pilgrim, Abhay visited a few temples, especially the principal temples established by the followers of Lord Chaitanya, but he had to move on, like the Radha Raman, Radha Madan Mohan temple, Radha Gopinath, Radha Govinda, Radha Damodar, and we have the 7 temples, right, like that. And Krishna is the only shelter, and of course we know that, but still from this section I just named it. There were also risks in traveling. Once he was sitting in a train compartment in Mathura station when a monkey suddenly entered and took away his belongings. Early one morning before dawn, while he was on his this tanga sort of a thing, or there was the horse was going very in speed, and it just hit a large heap of rubbish in the middle of the road, and everything went upside down, topsy-turvy, everything went on, and Prabhupada also flew into the air, and he again landed back. So the Tangawala thought that, he was not moving, he might have been unconscious, and then he realized he was all right, and everybody was shocked. He was shocked, but he realized that, Krishna had protected him one more time, like how he was protected when there was a fire, when he was a child, his cloth got fire. But Krishna was always protecting Srila Prabhupada. As we see even in the Jaladuta, how he got heart attack and how he saw in his dream, Shri Krishna was, giving him, telling him, making him relaxed and saying that I am with you. So Krishna had always been with Prabhupada. performing prescribed duties. So this is like, we do bhakti and we say that, now I need not do my prescribed duties. No, the dharma we have to. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text 17 and 18, he is explaining how a self-realized person is. And then he is telling that, Arjuna, he's telling Arjuna, oh, Arjuna, you are not yet there. So you continue prescribed duty. But of course, Srila Prabhupada was there. But Srila Prabhupada, in his own purports, he says that even if a sadhu who is a Paramhamsa, who is completely self-realized, he need not do all the prescribed duties, but to show others so that others do not go astray, they continue doing their prescribed duties and the regulative principles. They follow everything, even if they are not in a need, because they are already liberated, but still so that others, yad acharitya, right? Like whatever the famous or the leaders do, the people in general will follow. For that reason, Prabhupada did his all the duties. So for 5 years, I traveled widely out of Allahabad, and when he was home, he put in long hours at the dispensary. But he also spent time with his wife and played with his children. Srila Prabhupada is telling this. When my son was about 2 years old, he was very naughty, and we know the story that he was trying to touch the fan again and again. And so they called him, I'm not sure it is Pecha or Pocha. Pecha means owl in Bengali. So I don't know if he called him owl. But anyway, so he said Pecha. So Prabhupada's friend was there and he said, if you sit for some time, 1 minute, then I will give you a gift. And Pecha was so naughty that he would not sit even for a minute. And then his friend said, plug out the electric switch off the electric point or plug it out, and then you let him touch when it slows down a little bit. And then that's what Srila Prabhupada did. And Pecha, he touched the fan and it made a loud sound. It says there, yeah, tongue. And then after that he would, even if they would ask, do you want to touch again, and he would say, no, I don't want to touch. So as soon as his daughter Sulakshmana could speak, he began teaching him, Srila Prabhupada was teaching her, the Bengali translation of prayers, Guru Ashtaka, which begins, the spiritual master. This is a prayer we do every morning in the Brahma Muhurta, right? The spiritual master is the receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material life, of repeated birth and death. That's the Guru Ashtaka prayer we sing Samsara Dhaba every morning. That's what Srila Prabhupada was teaching, his daughter. When she was how old? She was, as soon as her daughter could speak, as soon as she could speak, he started teaching. So except for his obligatory travels, Abhay stayed at home and satisfied his family. He tended diligently to his business, and it prospered. The business was prosperous. In the Kumbh Mela, January 1928, Prabhupada all of a sudden saw the Gaudiya Math people, and he said, oh, Gaudiya Math people, yes, please come in. He was so happy. Then Bhakti Pradipa Tirtha Swami was the same sannyasi who was there when first time they met Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur at Narendra Mallik's. And folding his palms, he was in a humble gesture standing before Abhay in simple saffron khadi robes, his shaven head with the tuft of the shikha, and with the Vaishnava Tilak. Tirtha Maharaj said that we are new here. We are going to establish a temple in Allahabad. We have heard your name, so we have come to you. Please help us. And Srila Prabhupada immediately agreed. He said, okay. Grihastha, so perfect Grihastha. As a Grihastha, he invited like a Grihastha, become a Grihastha by having association of a sadhu. Otherwise, they are Grihamayadis. So Abhay invited the Gaudiya Math devotees to come to his home and hold a bhajan and lecture, and his wife would cook prasadam, and they accepted very happily. But Gaur Mohan Dev, he for some reason thought that these Vaishnavas are not the Vaishnavas, the genuine Vaishnavas. They were not the right people, and he was like, critical about them. But as soon as they started speaking, he realized, he felt like, oh, they're Vaishnavas. He cried, old and invalid as he was. He immediately, Gaur Mohan Dev, fell down at their feet and I misunderstood you, sir. I thought you were a sannyasi from another mission. I'm glad to meet you, as Gaur Mohan said. He was very jubilant, very happy. And we see how Srila Prabhupada was completely, and he is following his Guru Maharaj through the mission, through ISKCON. After Kumbh Mela, Pradeepa Tirtha Swami left, but 5 or 6 of his brahmachari disciples were still there. Disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati were in Allahabad, maintaining a small matha headquarters. They worshipped the deity, held an evening program of kirtan and lectures, and preached actively to the local people. The devotee in charge, Atulananda Brahmachari, would visit the home of Allahabad citizens, trying to solicit subscriber members of the for the matha. As we see, ISKCONs also have this membership, and we hear how Prabhupada's disciples would go and try to get subscribers, get memberships for ISKCON, right? We hear, and they will get books for free, and so many perks would be given to them if they become a member. And then half a rupee per month, a person would receive a subscription to Gauriya Math magazine, as we have Back to Godhead magazines. So it was Gauriya Math magazines. So Srila Prabhupada perfectly following his Guru Maharaj. Atulananda Brahmachari came to him, Abhay, received him very well, and offering some charity, and often discussed about Lord Chaitanya and Bhagavad Gita, and also asked about his spiritual master, about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Not yet spiritual master officially, but in his heart, yes. Abhay also got to know how undaunted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was. While in 1925, he took a procession around the Navadvip, and he had the risk of being attacked because of him accepting disciples from different castes. Like that was the argument before also, which he won over, that Brahmana is born in a Brahmana family and Shudra is born in a Shudra family. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not do that. He took disciple. If you are qualified, you can be a disciple. That was his understanding, and that was the understanding of all our acharyas, including Srila Prabhupada. A year ago, he had begun publishing his magazine Sajjana Toshini in 3 languages, including an English edition called The Harmonist. The Gauriya Math Ashrama moved very close to Abhay's home, making it possible for him to visit the temple every evening, playing mridanga, singing bhajans, and sometimes leading the Sankirtan. Now, the Gauriya Math was so close to Srila Prabhupada, home, Abhay's home, that he was going there every evening and relishing the association of the Vaishnavas, the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, every moment by playing, singing, and doing kirtan, leading kirtan, like that. So, and for the brahmacharis, obviously, Abhay seemed to be a new life to their ashram, and for Abhay, new life had come to him in his reunion with the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. This is the last part. Sorry for running over time. Beg your forgiveness. This is the last slide. So passing of Gaur Mohan De. The next morning, Abhay called the doctor. So this is the time when Gaur Mohan De became very, very sick. And so Abhay came from Mumbai. He was in Bombay, and he came from there, and then he called the doctor, and the doctor said, "Your father is living. We don't know how he is living," right? The doctor told him he has practically no pulse. He has been living without food for several months. And we see that when Prabhupada was leaving us behind in this material world, wrapping up his Leela, he was also not taking prasadam. And he said at that time, this is the biggest proof that we are not this body, we are the soul. That without the food, we cannot survive. But yet he was surviving, and so was his father, Gaur Mohan De, and Prabhupada also was the same. That, and yet we are surviving. So what is that if not food? What is that surviving us? Our souls. Then Prabhupada, he was asking his daddy, this is a common culture in India, before somebody is about to leave their body, they will ask, Akhri Ichha, like the last desire. What is your last desire? What do you want us to do for us to make you happy? Because both the parties, they know that we will not have the association of each other for long. So Gaur Mohan De, as soon as he heard that, and he said, why did the doctor say something? Like, did he say when I will leave? And Srila Prabhupada said, no. Abhay said, no, I'm just asking. And he said, Gaur Mohan De said, give our cow to the Gauriya Math, the Allahabad Gauriya Math. And Abhay, he gave the cow and the calf to the Gauriya Math. And then next time again, after a few days again, Srila Prabhupada had asked, like, what's your desire? And then again, Gormohan, they said, why? Did the doctor say again something? And Prabhupada said, no, I'm just asking. And then he said, okay, invite all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas of Allahabad and other Vaishnavas also. Let them chant Harinam in the evening, and you supply them with good food. That is my wish. Abhay arranged it, and in the evening, Harinam started. At 11 o'clock, all of them took prasad and left. That night, Gormohan, they passed away. Abhay felt the loss of his father painfully. His father had given him everything he had ever wanted, had been careful to raise him as a pure Vaishnava, and had always worshipped Radha and Krishna. Although Abhay was a competent young man, he felt lost without his dearmost protector and friend, who had literally prayed to every holy man he met that his son becomes a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. That best well-wisher was now gone. If he has, as if he has suddenly become a sadhu. You see Srila Prabhupada there and his brother there, their shaved head, and that's what they do, when somebody passed according to the ashrama, according to the varna they are from, they either follow 11 days or 13 days, they will live like a sadhu. They will sleep on a thin mat called chatai. They will sleep on the floor. They will have a very austere life. Their clothes will be very austere. Their food will be very austere, very, very simple prasad. So that's what you see there on the picture. And say that as if suddenly he has become Srila Prabhupada with this attire of sadhu. He has all of a sudden, he had always been a sadhu. Now on this occasion of his father passing away, it has been manifested, it has been revealed to the world that he is a sadhu. And he looks like the sadhu his father envisioned he would become. So Srila Prabhupada's father always wanted, he didn't have a big dream about Srila Prabhupada becoming a doctor, engineer or somebody, but he always wanted his son, his pet son as he is called, to be a sadhu, worshipper, devotee of Srimati Radharani. And Srila Prabhupada, he looked so natural. He looked so natural in this getup, in this, in this bhesh, in Hindi, they say in this attire of a sadhu, that it never looked like as if he ever had a head full of hair and a mustache and all. He looked very natural. So with that, I would end today's class, and I'm sorry for all the mistake that I have committed. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patidanam pavneveyo vaishnaveyo namo nama. Thank you, and please forgive me for the mistake. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta ki jai, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Thank you.
Hari bol, Hari bol, Hari bol, Mataji. What a wonderful presentation, and the way you started the class, you narrated, and the transitions from part 1, part 2, part 3, those are very smooth, Mataji. And especially I like the part where you said, what is a meaning of sadhu, bona fide guru, how we should identify a bona fide guru. That is very nice. And second part I especially like, where Narendra Mullik has taken Srila Prabhupada to Ulta Dang, and they want the Srila Prabhupada's confirmation that Siddhanta Saraswati is a real guru. That is also very, very clear. Mataji made it very clear why they have taken the Srila Prabhupada with them. And reminding things also, Mataji, you narrated very, very nicely without any breaks in between, Mataji. And we can see, and especially I can feel the love for Srila Prabhupada you have, Mataji, so much. Really, really very, very grateful to you, Mataji. This whole chapter, you narrated very sweetly, Mataji. My humble obeisances to you. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
May your words become true. Thank you.
You already immersed in Srila Prabhupada's Mataji, Lilamrta, and reading everyday lectures, listening, immersing yourself, Mataji. It's a great fortune to have you on this call, Mataji. Thank you so much. So dear devotees, so we all can share our realizations for our chapter 3, Mataji's chapter 3 summary. Please go ahead. I think we have to unmute. Let me unmute.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danut Pranams. What a wonderful session, Mataji. Very, very nice presentation. In fact, you took us to that era of Srila Prabhupada, and with the scenes of chai in the train station and so many other things. We look like we were with Prabhupada at that time. So it was so realistic and so nice, Mataji. Of course, it's because of the love that's emanating from your heart. Thank you so much for your wonderful association.
Your blessings, Mataji. Thank you.
So Mataji, I see a comment from Parima Mataji. Parima Mataji and Shivani Mataji. Parima Mataji says, wonderful, wonderful class, Mataji. Hari Bol Danvat pranams to you. Thank you so much for your association. And Shivani Mataji too. Hare Krishna Mataji, Danvat pranam. Absolutely beautiful class, Mataji. Explained so beautifully. Thanks so much for your great association. Please give your association more often. Hari Bol. And I think Yeshomati Mataji. Yeah, she also said very, very nice class and nice narration. Wonderful. So, dear devotees, if there are no more realizations or if there are no more questions, then we can end our call.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danvat Pranam. Can I go?
Mataji, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Mataji.
Danvat Pranam, dear Sakhi, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, which is so nicely explained, Srila Prabhupada Lila. First you explain, I take only 2.5 minutes. You explain about the 1911 challenges of Krishna conscious. Those who are Krishna conscious, they only preach in 7-year Bhagavad Gita. At the 7 Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is 7 years old. That time he read the Sri Bhagavad Gita, and you explain that student read and he read his father book. That name is Surya Siddhanta. Read through in a Surya Siddhanta. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is take a sannyas, take a initiation from Sri Gaur Kishore Das Baba, and dedicate his body, mind, and words to Lord Krishna and Srimati Shri Radharani. Then he chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra whole night and day, cooking little rice, eating little rice, and million time chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Then you explain Bhaktivinoda Thakur's temple of Lord Jagannatha. Then in 1819, Bhajan Kutir of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, you take us there. Actually, Mataji, we are not qualified to enter any Leela, but you are just involved in the Leela, and you take us in all the Dham, and then Jagannath Das Baba and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Sankirtan with them, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji's birthplace. There is Jagannath Das Baba is sitting in one tokri. His body is बहुत ही वो हो गई, छोटी हो गई थी. And when Jagannath Das Baba is dancing that place, so many Tulsi Maharani plant is there, and वो जंप करके वहाँ वो टोकरी में से निकल के डांस करने लगे. Then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati understood that this is a place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthday place and birthplace. And then Bimal Prasad is 4 years old, offering without offering the mango. He's tried to eat. Then from that day, he is not eating mango when his father remembers him. Then devotees of Gaudiya Math, and then I just rememberized the point only, Khanti movement. And Abhay could not when do it, matlab Abhay has that family, so he cannot totally surrender to his preacher master. And moving Allahabad 1923 Prayag with his family. Dr. Ghosh and Prayag pharmacist, they start Prayag pharmacy, and Abhay sister Rajeshwari, Abhay father staying with them, and then Jawaharlal Nehru is that his customer of Prayag pharmacy. Radharani is not supporting much. Abhay Prabhuji's Abhay, his wife Radharani is not supporting much. Prayagraj is 2 years old. You will give a darshan of that picture. And Prabhupada father and Sulakshina, his sister, and also so many followers. And there is so many followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Million time of he chant million time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. 1980 he take a sannyas. I think I made some mistake here. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Goswami Maharaj, like a Mrudanga and Kartal, the kirtan is going on, but the message of Lord Chaitanya is for he travel all over the world, and not travel all over the place, forgive me. Book travel, Srila Prabhupada book is travel all over the world, and Srila Prabhupada is preaching practice Krishna conscious. So we can sitting in Atlanta or California or in a where you are staying, Mataji Dallas, we can read Srila Prabhupada book and preach the message of Lord Krishna and Srimati Shri Radharani. 1915 by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and by the mercy of Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. 1915 Bhagavad praise start. Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. British convinced tea, chai, Mataji. It's remind when we travel in Indian train. Abhay is very strict, and wife regularly. Radharani, his wife, is regularly taking tea. Abhay is a Vaishnav, strong. Abhay is following strictly all the rules and regulation, and which even in vegetarian hotel, they serve mushroom, garlic, but Abhay avoid all that. Prabhupada memories and. Then Sudakirti Das Prabhu in the morning time in a Brahma Murat, Prabhupada is get up and chant and all the prayers. And 1925 there is a Gopina. In 1925 somehow Srila Prabhupada enter in Sridham Vrindavan Dham. Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Radha Raman, Shri Radha Damodar. Lord Krishna is protected Srila Prabhupada. Even in Jalduta also we know the stories. And Mataji, it's so much pain in my leg, Mataji. Before 3 days I fall down, but somehow by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by lay down and making these notes, Mataji, because you are so pure Vaishnavi, Mataji. And then explain about the patch. Then there is a electric shock, so that electric fan, they never point out that electric. Sulakshina never point out that his finger in a fan. And then Guru Ashtakam we are singing in the morning. Then so that Srila Prabhupada wants to explain here about how to come out from birth and death by the association of Vaishnava, and by the mercy of by the chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra attentively, following rules and regulations of Srila Prabhupada. And then you explain about Gaudiya Math and sing and playing kartal and mridanga and singing Vaishnav song in a Gaudiya Math also. And and then finally you explain about we are not body but we are soul, that his father is survived without food and water so many days. And then same with Srila Prabhupada, last desire is, and I have seen that up to last moment Prabhupada is teaching Shri Bhagavatam. His body has become like a small, जैसे श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबा की बॉडी टोपले में आ गई, ऐसी हो गई थी. He's not able to take prasad and water, not able to take breathe, but still up to last moment Prabhupada is explaining Shishi Bhagavatam, and his father's last desire to give a cow in a Gaudiya Math, and he fulfilled that desire also. And after and last day, that is touch to heart, that Gormon day is his father is said that I'm not please invite all the Vaishnava, Gaudiya Vaishnava, to pick and give them a nice prasadam. So many Vaishnava came to Prabhupada home and give a prasadam, nice prasadam to them, and whole night they are doing kirtan and bhajan. And then his father passed away Gormon day, and his father is always Gormon day is always making all the Vaishnava that my son Abhay has become a sincere Vaishnava, and he become a sincere devotee of Srimati Shri Radharani. Mataji, pray for us that ये सर हमेशा संतों और भक्तों की शरण में नमा रहे, और ऐसा ही स्ट्रॉन्ग एसोसिएशन भक्तों और संतों को मिले, और we get up early in the morning and we complete our japa. Hari Hari Gauranga. Then but pranam to all Bhakti Sangha Vaishnava. Then but pranam to you Mataji for your sincere seva. Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudev ki jai. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai, our Guru Parampara ki jai. Thank you Mataji. Then but pranam to your sincere seva.
Thank you.
Vaishnavi you are.
Thank you. I'm neither pure, not anything you said about me, but yet by the association of pure devotees like you, I may someday get to do some service towards Srila Prabhupada, and may I get some love for Srila Prabhupada. But that's only by the association of you devotees that I can say few things. I neither know anything nor I'm pure. I'm far from it. So, but then thank you for your kind words. I need your blessings, Mother. Thank you.
Okay, so Anuradha Mataji, I have a question, Mataji. We heard about this Sajjana Toshini magazine, right?
Yeah.
So, harmonist. So, for how long is it was in the publishing, and why it was suddenly stopped? Why Srila Prabhupada could not take forward it, Mataji? Do you have any information about this magazine?
I have read something about it, Mataji. I'm right now. I'm not able to recollect what I have read, but there was something. And also, if you see, that's what I was saying. I mean, this is my speculation. So I am thinking from because for the question you have asked, but I can check with somebody else more qualified rather. What I understand is, if you see, the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's level was very, very high. I have Bhakti Surya Siddhanta, it is so difficult. Even Brahma Samhita purport, if you see Brahma Samhita purport, those purport will blow your mind, Mataji, if you read. I don't know, at least for me, it was very difficult. And Prabhupada says, what my spiritual master writes is just for me and not for you, towards his disciple. And that, of course, is applicable to us too, I understand. So that could be one reason that, we are not at a level where we can understand what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote, whether it is English-wise or it is realization-wise, I would say. That is my understanding, Mataji, but I would definitely ask somebody and would get back to you with a solid answer. I'll ask.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much.
Mataji, what's the name of the magazine again, if you could repeat? Sorry.
The Harmonist?
No, which Toshini?
Sajjana Toshini.
Sajjana Toshini.
Okay.
That was in Bengali, but in English, it was titled as The Harmonist.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Wonderful class, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, sure, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Okay, dear devotees, if there are no more realizations, then we can end the call with Mataji's permission. Mataji, once again, thank you so much for this very, very wonderful narration of chapter 3. So with this, I would like to pay my obeisances to you and all the devotees on the call. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyascha pititanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prabhupada Lilamrta ki jai, Our Grace Anuradha Mataji ki jai. Much Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Anuradha Mataji, you sing Vaishnav song so nicely. Can you please sing 2 sentences or two lines of bhajan?
Let me just check, Mataji. Shama Supriya Mataji, do we have time?
Yeah, yes, Mataji. Yes.
Let me just see. I can check. I had a song, but I'm not sure. I'm not able to see my screen, the other screen, Mataji. Let me check. Mataji, can you find the song Ohe Vaishnava Thakur for me, because my screen is blocked. I'm not able to go.
Sure.
Or
Sure.
if I see-
1 minute, Mataji. Let me go to KK songs. Okay. Can you tell the initial matter? What is a letter with?
Ohe Vaishnava Thakur by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Ohe Vaishnava Thakur it is. I had it open in my screen.
No, Mataji. I'm asking what is the letter we will start by letter search.
Oh, I have it, Mataji. Okay, I will share it. Let me check.
You got it? Okay. Good. Wait.
Do you see it, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
ওহে বৈষ্ণবা ঠাকুর দয়ার সাগরে এই দাসে করুণা করি দিয়া পদ ছায়া সদো হে আমারে তোমারও চরণ ধরি ছয়া বেগা ধমি ছয়া দোষ শোধি ছয়া গুণা দেহ দাসে ছয়া শত সঙ্গা দেহ হে আমারে বসেছি সঙ্গের আসে একাকী আমারা নাহি পায়া বলা হরিনাম সংকীর্তনে তুমি কৃপা করি শ্রদ্ধা বিন্দু দিয়া দেহ কৃষ্ণ নামাধনে কৃষ্ণ সে তোমার কৃষ্ণ দিতে পারো তোমারও শক্তি আছে আমি তো কাঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলি ধাই তব পাছে পাছে প্লিজ রিপিট আমি তো কাঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলি ধাই তব পাছে
Hari Hari, Gauranga, Dandavatra. Beautiful sing.
Thank you, Mataji, for the opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much. So with this, we could end the call. Once again, thank you, Anuradha Mataji and all the devotees. So we will end this call. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you very much.
Vinita Mataji, are you present on the call? Vinita Mataji? I think Mataji is busy. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Closing the call, dear devotees. Hari Bol. Thank you.